Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we will be discussing about the 4 different AI agent frameworks that is designed and developed by Microsoft. The first one, it's the Azure AI Foundry service, which we already discussed in our previous videos. So basically, it is a fully managed service using which you can build your agent factory for your enterprise. It unifies the model, tools, and adds the governance into a single runtime. And it handles the thread tool calls, and on top of which you can always add filter, content safety, or whatever you wanted to have it. As it is emphasizes the enterprise readiness, it does support the private VNet, content filter, compliance, RBAC, and all those. And it also support multi-agent patterns, not necessarily the autonomous agents, rather it will be the connected agents. If you are truly looking for the autonomous agent, then probably you have to use either a semantic kernel or AutoGen runtime. But in most of the enterprise use cases, Azure AI Foundry service, agent service, it's more than sufficient. Let's say you have a single agent that would handle a set of actions, then you can go with the agent service by itself. Now let's talk about the prompt flow. So basically, it is a low-code visual designing framework. In the past, we have designed the workflows. It is pretty similar to that, but it is not exactly the workflow. Those workflow engines, for instance, SharePoint, K2 workflows, that will have the schedule and it will support the approval process. The prompt flow, it's unlike the typical workflow, rather it can be a part of the workflow. So let's assume that you wanted to build a invoice approval workflow. This particular prompt workflow can be a part of this invoice workflow. Let's assume that when a user submits the invoice with a proper description and the value of this particular invoice it's less than a certain amount, then you want to understand the invoice information as well as the description. If everything matches, then you wanted to automatically approve that. Then in this particular case, you are trying to understand the description of that particular request and the invoice. You wanted to extract all this information, right? So in this particular scenario, you can use the prompt flow as a part of your workflow to extract this information and see if it matches. Then you can go for the approval. So that is what you do with the prompt flow. So prompt flow, in most of the cases, let's say like you have a series of steps to execute, then you can use the prompt flow to do it, like series of well-defined steps. Then you can go with the prompt flow. These steps will not change, means you can always have a conditional execution, but irrespective of that, the overall execution, right, it is not going to change dynamically. Then you can use the prompt flow for that part. Then we have the semantic kernel. So it's pretty similar to the agent service that we discussed, right? Except that it's more for the developers. So everything is done through the code, which means that you have a lot of options to do the configuration. It is flexible enough. But again, on the other hand, you have to do everything from your side, right? For instance, in the agent service, the thread management, it's part of the framework. But in semantic kernel, you have to handle that, right? Top of that, it does support the multi-agent implementation. So again, like when we talk about the agent service, it does support the multi-agent system. However, it is not a truly multi-agent system. Here, when we talk about semantic kernel, it is a true multi-agent system that you can build. It is a production-ready framework. If you really wanted to implement the multi-agent system, this is the only option right now we have. Then we talk about the AutoGen. AutoGen, it's the extended version of the semantic kernel, I would say. though the overall architecture it's totally different. Here it uses the event based execution, right, the AutoGen. But at a overall execution level, if you see it, this is again a multi-agent system similar to the semantic kernel, right? So which means that again you have to do everything from your end. This is also meant for the developers who wanted to build the multi-agent system, independent multi-agent system, not necessarily the connected multi-agent system. It is an independent multi-agent system. Then you can use the AutoGen framework. So what is the difference between semantic kernel and the AutoGen? Again, AutoGen it is much more advanced than the semantic kernel, right? So now let's compare here frameworks and see which one will fit into your specific use case. So the first one, the very basic one, it's the Prompt Flow. It is basically a uh, visual based framework, right? Using a visual design you can build your overall flow. Of course, like you can do it through the portal, through SDK, CLI, which we will discuss in the upcoming videos. But this is more of a visual oriented implementation. And then like does it support a singular multi-agent? It is a single agent, means ready for the production. Of course it is ready for the production. It's a mature SDK, like most of the companies uses the Prompt Flow. It is a stable one. Agent mode, it's like you can use the visual based flow, or you can also have a flexi flow. Again, like if you go with the flexi flow, then you have to do everything through the code. And the languages, it's like Python, and Python is the major language for this, right? And like this is also part of the Azure AI Foundry, so it is connected. So development speed, because it is the visual based, so you can do it really quick. And the like it's all a managed flows. So now let's talk about Azure agent service. So again, so intended use, it's to build a single agent that will take care of set of actions. It does support single agent and multi agent, but it is not a true multi agent system. I mentioned the same multiple times. It is production ready, and you will get a monthly update. Major languages, it's like a C#, Python, and it is of course natively integrated with Azure. Development speed would be 4, because like as a framework it does provide many features. And the like service phase, it's fully integrated, so you really don't have to spend a lot of energy here. And then like we have a semantic kernel, so it is meant for the developers. So unlike the Prompt Flow or the agentic service it's the combination, right? So it is not necessarily meant for the power users, you but it is not strictly for the developers. It's kind of a mix. So you, a power user, should know or should have some development skills. But semantic kernel, it's meant for the developers. It's purely a developer oriented framework. It does support a multi-agent system, Python. You can use Python or .NET. And then like, is it production ready? Yes, it is production ready. So it is a mature SDK. It uses the plugins and the like languages Python, and then like it is also connected with Azure. Development speed, it is going to be little slow compared to the other two frameworks. In services, it is outside of Azure, so which means that you have to do everything from your end. I mean to say, like you build the semantic kernel based implementation, convert that into the Docker, and then like deploy it into the Kubernetes, and then like take care of all this validation, all those things, right? So definitely it is going to take a bit of a time for us to deploy it into the production. And AutoGen, it is a truly multi-agent framework. It uses the event-driven framework. And then like multi-agent, like the reason to go to AutoGen, it's when like you wanted to have a autonomous multi-agent system. So it is not at a production ready system. The latest version it's 0.72. It is not a not a production like generally available. So it's a open source system. So if you see here, it's a more of a Python based one. Azure integration, again, it's pretty similar to the semantic kernel. It's not necessarily integrated with Azure. Development speed, I would say, it's pretty similar to the semantic kernel, and the like learning curve, it's it's much more than compared to any of the other frameworks. Again, this is a pure open source software, so it is you have to take care of everything, right? Recap, when to use what, right? So if you truly have a standard set of actions based on the given input, then you will go with the prompt flow. For instance, I mentioned like invoice, right? So invoice, what you do, like a user will be submitting the invoice and the description. So what you do, you extract the invoice information, like what are the products, how much is that, what is the total cost, and all those. And then like you compare with the description. If you feel that hey, like this is good enough, then you will go with the approval. So the overall execution, it's going to be straightforward, right? And then like there is going to be a assumptions and all those things, that is a separate story. But let's assume that this flow, it's a straightforward flow, then you will go with a prompt flow. Agent service, it's like how you wanted to create a customer support agent, or incident management, or request management, service request management systems. Then you can go with the agent, Azure Foundry agent service. Then when you have a independent systems, right? For instance, you wanted to have a team where like you wanted to build a leader, and the like leader will be delegating the work to the developer then submit to the reviewer and the like testers, of that kind of a multi-agentic system. It's where you will be using the semantic kernel. AutoGen use case will be pretty similar, but then like you will have a lot of other options for you to handle that. So I hope like this in this video you will get to know about the overall picture of these four different frameworks. That's all I have for this video. Thank you for watching.